All right, so this is just a little kind of step-by-step discussion of what you need to do for the B students for 7th hour, since there will be ACT testing for the seniors this week. Basically, for your day 2, you have 2 parts of a summative. There's a summative quiz that goes along with the reading that you did the last couple days last week. But then included in this is kind of an extension of a summative that we did with India before, talking about like a graphic organizer and then applying that to the idea of creating a thesis statement with an essay frame. So first thing's pretty self-explanatory. You do the summative quiz, use your notes, and then the second part of this is this graphic organizer. So if you click on this, it'll take you to this page. So what you are going to do is create a graphic organizer that kind of goes over the whole unit that we did. And I'll show you what that looks like. But what you're going to focus on is providing information in that graphic organizer. You will take out information to answer this question. Political and economic instability in the decade after independence was the colonial legacy. To what extent do you agree with this statement with reference to Indian independence? So basically what we're doing is we're trying to look at what political and economic instability occurred in India and make an argument that says why it was and then why it wasn't the theme of the legacy of colonial rule. So the colonial legacy is basically, what did the British do in India that caused political and economic instability? And you're both arguing why it was and why it wasn't, because to what extent that is what you were basically doing. You're not just saying this is what happens, you're doing an agree and a disagree. Okay, so there's 2 things that are attached here. I'm going to go over first this graphic organizer, which when you open it up will give you this Google Doc. So you'll just make a copy of this and you'll be turning this in. And then in addition to this, you are going to create an essay frame with a thesis and an argument. And so first step, go through and answer these questions. You're pretty much looking at maybe 3 points for each box. And essentially every paper 2 topic we look at with independence will look at these topics: the origins of that independence, the methods of achieving it, and then the formations and challenges too. So once you have all of these things created, or answered, what you're going to want to do for your question is focus on this and picking or choosing ideas that come out of these first 2 columns that will assess that question. So remember, our question is looking at what political and economic instability came after independence. All right? And in doing so, what you're going to really look at are what are the effects of this and what happens, and then go back to the ideas of what started that independence as a way to kind of balance and assess this is how it was and how it wasn't. All right? So that's kind of what makes up your argument. But your thesis should really focus on one side of the argument, in agreement or disagreement. But however, when you're answering these questions, which this brings us to the essay structure, that's when we get into this idea. And I've showed you guys this before, but basically in an essay structure, so you're not actually writing the essay. You're just taking the graphic organizer and then applying it into an outline. All right? So in the introduction, you're going to define the topics that you're going to focus on. And these aren't like, a detailed list of definitions, but say, for example, you're going to focus on, the partition's impact politically on India. So if that's going to be really your great extent, that's the extent to which you agree that instability happened, that's what you're going to focus on. So a lot of these ideas are going to kind of come from that Nehru graphic organizer and then apply to kind of the bigger picture of everything. And so then the way that you start to divide this up is into body paragraphs. So you have terms, you have ideas that you're going to link or focus on, and then your last sentence would be a thesis answering the question, to what extent. So you're basically going to say, political instability was a focus of how the colonial legacy impacted Indian independence, something like that. And so now what you're going to be doing is laying this out into kind of a topic sentence with a research question and a statement focused on something either socially, politically, or economically. Now, So obviously it's asking the political and economic in this sense. So you're giving an argument of how economically this was a legacy of the colony. And then what you're going to follow that up with is a second argument. And then in that second argument, you have basically kind of an ultimate ideal of a topic that you're focusing on. And so that would be kind of like your first paragraph, all right? And then in your second paragraph, you're going to apply these ideas of counter arguments, kind of the idea of like, this is how it was not an impact. And then ultimately, you're going to provide a one-sentence conclusion. Now, I know a lot of this can get a little kind of overwhelming because it's just giving you a lot of examples. But what you want to focus on is this idea of the research question. So you're looking at political or economic legacy, and the idea of specific topics dealing with the political or economic. And you're going to do that for each paragraph. And so you may divide it up into 2 paragraphs, you may have 3. You really don't want to go over 3 basic arguments, right? But within each paragraph, you want the argument and the second argument being kind of the counter to it, all right? So it says here, don't forget Peel and then add counter. So the idea of what you're trying to do is give these arguments with counter arguments in the reference of what is point, evidence, explanation, link. And kind of the idea of why we say Peel is just because you want to think of like, here's my point, here's my argument, all right? Here's the evidence I have, and here's my explanation of why or how this supports my point. And then here's the link to the next. So what you're doing with this Peel is you're basically in this essay argument saying, here's my point, all right? This is how it was a colonial legacy, either politically or economically, all right? I'm going in and now I'm going to give an evidence of how it was something, all right? And then I'm going to explain why it was either for or against, agreeing or disagreeing. And then the follow-up of that is that link then to your counterpoint. And so then the counterpoint is basically going to say like, well, this is how it didn't work. And you want to go back and forth with that because you want to provide the reasoning that applies to your thesis, but then showing the counter argument as a way to just exemplify the fact that like there's 2 sides to this argument, all right? And basically what I want you to do is take the information that you've put in here and just apply it and kind of plug it in to this idea of an outline. And so ultimately what I'm looking for, kind of if you look at the grade here, is that I'm looking at your thesis statement. And if you'll notice, like this is very similar to the rubric that was used when we did the World War II India thesis statement. I'm looking at the thesis statement, I'm looking at the essay frame, I'm also looking at the graphic organizer. So I'm trying to kind of balance all of this out. So last time, all you really did was this thing. Put this together, most of you. So what I'm doing is just basically you're doing the same thing. So if you did that World War II India independence reading or essay frame and you did really well, you just follow the same format. The only thing I'm adding is that you're also going to turn in this graphic organizer. And you can do your actually, I would hope that you would actually do your essay frame and your thesis in this document, which if you don't know, you have to basically, go to this part, file, make a copy, all right? Make sure that when you do that also that you hit share, all right? And make sure that you open this so that it shares with everyone. So at the bottom here, anyone on the internet can view. Otherwise, I can't open it, and you won't get a grade. All right, and typically, if you see that you don't have a grade, please make sure to check your notes or comments, because if I can't open it up, I'll put a comment on the assignment and say you need to open this and share it with me so that I can see it. All right, so that's pretty much for everybody who's not going to be here Tuesday. Hopefully those answers your questions. If you have any other questions, I will not be in office or class time that day because we're doing the ACT testing, so please either send me a message right here or go to email and send me a response. And then obviously Friday, I'll be in my office hours.